Hey, good morning. Michael Didier here. I'm sure glad you're there. Thank you for joining me. I'm broadcasting. Notice the background. I'm broadcasting from a different place. I've moved 3,000 miles across the country. Took me 9 days to get here, and have taken a new woman in my life. She's running away right now, but that's all right. Don't worry about it, honey. New woman in my life. Her name is Raya. Some of you knew her as Carissa, but she has a new name now, Raya. Raya means loved, or loved one, or lover. Come. This is my Raya.
Oh, we can't see ourselves.
No, we can't see ourselves. Sorry.
Look at my computer.
Yeah. So 3,000 miles. We've been together now for a week. We've been betrothed for probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks, something like that.
January 27th.
January 27th, yes. Well, I wanted you to see who Raya is and know that this was Carissa. Put it right there. All right. Well, so many exciting things going on in my life. I've adopted a dog, 2 dogs, and a horse. Oh my. Lions and tigers and bears. Well, let's get started. It's been 2 weeks since we've talked last. Seems like forever. Does it seem like a long time to you? Boy, it sure does for me. But I really needed the time to adjust, to drive. Man, what an adventure that was, driving 3,000 miles across the country with an overloaded van and an overloaded trailer. Oh my, I didn't think my car was gonna make it. The bands, I could hear them slipping towards the end as I was going over the Appalachians the last couple days. It got worse and worse and worse. But Yehovah got me here. I'm so blessed. I'm starting a new adventure in my life. So we'll see how this new adventure affects some of the things that we're learning and teaching. I'm learning and teaching. Last time, do you remember? It's been, like I said, 2 weeks. We talked about Joseph being sold into slavery. They wanted to kill him, his brothers. But it was Reuben who really protected his brother. Do you remember? Judah was the one who had the big idea. Hey, let's sell him. They saw the Ishmaelites coming from the north, coming up the pass. But little did they know the Midianites coming from the south, coming from Egypt, going back to Gibeon. Well, going back through Gibeon. These guys, the Ishmaelites, were coming from Gibeon, going to Egypt. The Midianites were coming from Egypt, going through Gibeon. Well, they found Joseph in the well and took him. Almost had a war between the Midianites and the sons of Jacob over Joseph. The Midianites were smart, though. Do you remember what they did? They said, hey, you said he's a disobedient servant. What else are you going to do with him? You might as well make a profit. So they sold him to the Midianites instead of the Ishmaelites, which they originally planned. But you know what? Midianites were going the wrong direction. Yehovah had to do something, didn't he? And so what did he do? He made the Midianites regret the fact that they bought this young man. And in order to purge themselves from the guilt, they sold him to the Ishmaelites, who Judah was originally going to sell him to. But Jacob's seed, Jacob's sons, didn't know that happened. They later looked for Joseph with the Midianites, but they couldn't find the Midianites, and they were going north instead of south. Well, we saw that it was a rough journey for Joseph. He cried, he wept. Remember, he fell on his mother's grave. And was it a word, a vision from Yehovah speaking to him? She said, go down to Egypt, obey your masters. Well, even after that, he said, no, I don't want to go. But of course he went. And they beat him. The Ishmaelites beat him. Probably kicked him. And when Yehovah saw that happening, do you remember what happened? He afflicted them. Every place where they hit Joseph, you hit him with your hand, the hand began to wither. If you kicked him, the leg began to wither. The earth shook. The sun became dark. Even the animals were so terrified they fell to the ground on their knees. Couldn't move them. And finally, the Ishmaelites asked Joseph for forgiveness. Well, you know what? They too, I think, regretted the fact that they had this young man in their care. Because when they got to Egypt, do you remember what they did? They sold Joseph to the Midianites. Remember, there were the sons of Abraham through Keturah. And it was the third-born son who was Midian, and the fourth-born son who was Midian. Well, the scriptures don't understand what's going on. And so we have, the Torah was so confused. You'll have to listen to the last lesson to hear what happened. But in Torah, we have the Ishmaelites. Oh, it's so confusing. We don't even know what's going on. Here it is in 37. Let's see if we can find it here. Here. They sat down to eat the meal. Here's Judah seeing the Ishmaelites. So Judah said to his brothers, what profit is it that we kill? What profit is there if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites. Well, then it says, then the Midianite traders passed by, so the brothers pulled Joseph up and lifted him out of the pit. Well, that's not what happened. They added the brothers. It says, so the Midianites passed by and pulled Joseph out of it. It was the Midianites that did that. And the Midianites did sell him to the Ishmaelites. But it's so convoluted in Torah, we can't even see it. Like I say, it looks like the Ishmaelites were selling Joseph to Potiphar. But they didn't. They sold him to the Midianites. And the Midianites sold him, they were just coming from Egypt. They heard Potiphar, the captain of the guards, looking for a good servant. This guy's perfect. They bought Joseph for the same price that the brothers sold it to the Midianites, the same price that the Midianites sold him to the Ishmaelites, and the Ishmaelites sold him to the Midianites for 20 shekels of silver. Finally, Potiphar bought him from the Midianites for 400 shekels of silver. Quite a profit. But you know what? The Midianites did not have the time to get to know Joseph. I think it's really interesting. We're talking about here, the very next chapter. No, 2 chapters. And Joseph, here it is, and Joseph descended to Egypt. Descended to Egypt. This descending involved Midianites, Ishmaelites, Midianites, and finally Potiphar to get Joseph to the place that Yehovah needed him to get to. Wow, What a journey. Well, we saw last time in Yasher, here, let me turn to Yasher, this same situation. Now, I've given you much from Yasher that we had talked about. Remember, after Joseph had been taken by the Midianites and then sold to the Midianites by the brothers, Judah came to the, what shall we call it, the well, the hole in the ground, and couldn't find him. Cried out, looked for him. What are we going to tell our father? Oh no! Do you remember what they did? It was Issachar who suggested that they kill a goat, tear up Joseph's coat of many colors, and give it to their father. You know what? They didn't want to lie to their father. They were going to set things up so that it looked like he'd been eaten by an animal. But they didn't want to tell him he'd been eaten by an animal. They didn't want to lie. So they just set up the evidence in such a way that the father would think, oh no, my son's been eaten by an animal. Oh, do you remember the grief that poor Jacob was in? Oh, and do you remember the brothers? How they repented for what they'd done in bringing such grief on their father. Well, we're going to pick up the story today, right in 38. It's actually a bit of a hiatus, I think. Why do we talk about this? Genesis 38, Tamar, the story of Tamar and Judah. It's an interesting story. But we have 37 and being sold to the Midianites, and then going to Potiphar, and then 38, we're talking about Tamar, and then 39, we're going back to Egypt. Why is this portion in here? I always have to ask that question. These are things that are going on simultaneously. Well, let's go to 38. Here it is. And it came to pass at that time that Judah departed. Remember, we were just talking about Joseph descending into Egypt? Here's the same word exactly. Only this is saying Judah departed from his brothers, descended from his brothers. Look what he's going to do. And visited a certain Adulamites, whose name was Hira. Hira went down, here's the word, Yarad, descended, went down. Joseph went down involuntarily. But Judah is going down, descending voluntarily. Look what he's going to do. He's going to take a woman from a daughter of a certain Canaanite. Here it is, verse 2. And Judah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And he married her and went to her, is what it says. Married her. What is the word they use for married? Here it is. Move it up here. And Judah saw Ra'ah, or no, Ra'ah, I've got Ra'ah on my mind. Saw Ra'ah. Remember, this is what Shechem did. He saw Dinah, he took Dinah, he humbled Dinah. Well, here's Judah. He saw the daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. Is Shua the name of the woman? Or is Shua the name of the father? You know, for most people, they might tend to think her name was Shua. But I know from my experience that women are not often named in the scriptures, at least in the Torah. It says he took her. They said married her. It's lakak. Here it is right here, lakak. He lakak her. He took her. See, we got all these terms that we use in English that kind of lead us away. And it says he went into her. The Torah says he came. Bo. He came. And he came to her. That's it. He came to her. Well, Yasher gives her name. Here's Yasher. Shua is Aliyat's father's name. And Judah went at that time to Adullam. And he came to a man of Adullam. And his name was Hira. And Judah saw there the daughter of a certain man of Canaan. And her name was Aliyat, the daughter of Shua. So now we know Shua is the father. And he took her and came to her. Look at, they said it right. Took her, came to her. And Aliyat bare unto Judah Onan, and Shelah, 3 sons. Torah says Shelah. Again, don't worry about the vowels. We're looking at the consonants. The transliteration of the Hebrew to the English, it gets a little bit confusing sometimes. Well, I said Genesis does not even give her name. She simply is the daughter of a certain Canaanite whose name was Shua. Here's a man, Judah, who's taking a Canaanite woman to himself. What did his fathers and his father's father think about their seed taking Canaanite women? This is not saying anything really positive about Judah, is it? Not at all. Here, Isaac and Rebekah were very unhappy when Esau took a wife from the daughters of Canaan. Listen to what some of the things that they said. This is actually Abraham now, Genesis 24. This is when he's sending Eliezer to get a bride for Isaac. He says, I will make you swear by Yehovah, the Elohim of heaven and Elohim of earth, that you will not take a woman for my son from the daughters of Canaan, among whom you dwell. Here's Genesis 26. This is Esau now taking a wife. It says when Esau was 40 years old, he took a woman. Well, we know this is incorrect. It says he took Nashim, women, Judith, the daughter of Beri, the Hittites. Remember we saw that Hittites were Heth. Remember Heth, it says, is the Jebusites, but the Het and the Tet in his name is where we get this Kettite. Beri, the Kettites. And Basemath, the daughter of Elan, the Kettite. All comes from Heth. That's Heth. And they were a grief of mind to Isaac and Rebekah. Oh yeah, they did not like these women at all. And Rebekah said to Isaac, I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Heth. There it is, the daughters of Heth. You know, it took me a long time to put this together, because it's that vowel, that E. Do you see it? Hittite, Hittite, Hittite. I am weary of my life because of the daughters of Het. If Jacob takes a wife of the daughters of Het like these, who are the daughters of the land, what good is my life to me? No, she just couldn't bear it. She wants to see her seed grow. But when you take a woman from the daughters of the land who doesn't love Yehovah, who's not separating herself, you're going to run into trouble every time. And this is what's happening in this chapter, because Judah is taking this woman. Let's find out how it goes down. Verse 3. So she conceived and bore a son and called his name And she conceived again and bore a son and called his name Onan. And she conceived yet again and bore a son and called his name Shelah. He was at Kasiv when she bore him. Kasiv, deceitful, a town where Shelah, the son of Judah, was born. I don't see that has any significance to the text, really. Why do they even mention that? Yasher didn't mention it, I don't believe. Well, let's watch for it. Those are questions that we just always have to ask ourselves. Why do they mention this town? Why is this important? Is it because maybe the first two were born closer together, and now this one is, maybe he's relocated himself? It seems that there is a significant difference between the first two boys and the last son. Because remember, well, we're going to see it here. I don't want to spoil the story. Let's keep reading. Then Judah took a woman for his firstborn, and her name was Tamar. Tamar. Who's Tamar? I put, Tamar is a righteous woman. I repent. Tamar is not a righteous woman. Tamar is what? Remember, there's no righteous woman in Torah. Tamar is a woman of worth. Gotta get this. This is so important. It's not about, remember, righteousness. How do you get righteousness? You get righteousness by following Yehovah's statutes, judgments, ordinances. That's not what a woman does. Right, Raya?
Yes.
She says yes. She follows her master, her Adon, me, as I lead her in the way she should go. But even if I'm not leading her in the way she should go, she's still going to follow me. And the sin is on me. Wow, that blows people's minds. There's women all over the earth leaving their man because they want to do righteousness. You might as well shoot yourself in the head. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Now you got no relationship with Yehovah. Foolish, foolish world. We just don't get it. We have trained our women to live as men. They don't even know how to live as a woman. It's hard. Relearning. Wow. Judah took a wife, a woman, for Tamar. Here it is, Yasher, 45:23. In those days, Judah went to the house of Shem. Look at that. To the house of Shem, and took Tamar, the daughter of Elam, the son of Shem. I got to show you something. Let's go to my age chart. I think you really need to see this. I'm going to reduce this a little bit. Oh, maybe I don't need to. Let's just see if we can figure it out. Here is Shem, the house of Shem. This is, remember, this is Judah. He's a son of Jacob. Here's Jacob way down here. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 generations. 12 generations, my God. That's amazing. Shem had Arphaxad. It's in Arphaxad's line that all these men are coming from. But now let's go back. Look at here. Here's the sons of Shem. The firstborn is who? Elam. Tamar is the daughter of Elam. Isn't that amazing? How old is this woman? This is Tamar. Oh my God. How old is she? Did he have her in his very, 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 how many times can you say very? 12 times to get him down to this generation that Judah's in. How does that work? Maybe when they're saying son of Shem, daughter of Elam, maybe we're talking multiple generations and they're telling us that she's in Shem's line and in Elam's line. That could be what's happening. You just don't know. Like I say, how old is this woman? She doesn't strike me as an old woman by any means. Well, verse 7 says, but Judah's firstborn, was wicked. Wicked. Ra. He was Ra. Here it is. Ra. He was Ra. Bad. Evil. And what does it say? But Judah's firstborn, his Bekor, was wicked, Ra, in the sight of Yehovah, and Yehovah killed him. Remember, this is the son of the Canaanite, isn't it? Do you think Yehovah is sending a message? I wonder. You know, as we get to know Judah was the one that said, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let's sell him. Don't kill him. What profit is there? He's leading his brothers. Now here he is, taking a woman of Canaan. I don't know that we're going to get to it today, but certainly next week we're going to see who the women are that all of these sons took right after they sold their brother, almost the same year. They're all marrying and taking women into they're all marrying. See, I fall back into that so easily. They're all taking women into their life right after this episode with the selling of Joseph into slavery. Well, I said it appears that did not want an heir from the woman of worth. No, wrong, Michael, you blew it. No, was wicked. I was thinking that was the one who put his seed out on the ground. We're going to see that was his brother. It says, and came to his woman Tamar, and she became his woman. And when he came to her, he outwardly, oh look, Raya, did it too. He destroyed his seed. That's where I got it. Maybe I'm not crazy. He destroyed his seed. And his work was evil in the sight of Yehovah, and Yehovah slew him. Wow. There it is. I was right. Yeah. Raya the other night said, tell me a story, master. We're in bed. Tell me a story, master. Tell me a story. I don't tell stories. I'm not a storyteller. Make one up. No, I can't. So I told her this story. And I was right. I was right in every aspect of it. I hadn't even read it yet, but I knew we were going to be talking about it this week, so I kind of wanted to refresh myself. So fun to see this. Well, I'm going to undelete what I just deleted because I was right. Come on, one more time. There it is. All right, good. Judah marries a pagan woman, a daughter of Canaan. All the sons of Aliat have no heirs in Torah. Isn't that interesting? Wow. It's a mercy, I think, to the kingdom of Yehovah to not have these wicked sons. You know, here's a man spilling his seed out on the ground rather than impregnate his woman. What does that say about birth control? You know, I had 2 miscarriages with my first woman. And I have to believe that part of those miscarriages was because of the birth control that we were using. Does that make Yehovah happy? Do you remember? We were talking about the antediluvian world. We were talking about the elixir that the men were giving to their women so they could keep their shapely bodies. Not have children. Birth control. It was considered wicked in the sight of Yehovah. Well, that's something we got to look at. Something important that we have to look at. Do we want to please Yehovah or not? Well, 38, verse 8. And Judah said to Onan, go into your brother's woman and marry her and raise up an heir to your brother. An heir to your brother. Is that odd to you? It's Torah. Isn't it interesting that it's Torah? Look what it says in Torah. It says, according to Yehovah's instructions, if brothers dwell together and one of them dies and has no son, the widow of the dead man shall not be Baal to a stranger outside the family. Her brother, her Baal's brother, shall go to her, take her as his woman, and perform the duty of a Baal's brother to her. I'd like to know if it is Baal's. I bet it is. You want to check it for me? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Raya will check it. Baal's brother. I'm guessing it's Baal's. And it shall be that the firstborn son which she bears will succeed to the name of his dead brother, that his name may not be blotted out of Israel. Firstborn brother in this case is going to get what? He's going to get a double portion, isn't he? Why on earth would not want Tamar to get pregnant? I don't know. Maybe it's to keep her shape. Maybe she was pretty. I don't know. It says, but if a man does not want to take his brother's woman, Aki's woman, Isha, then let his brother's woman go to the gates, to the elders of the city, and say, my husband's brother refuses to raise up a name to his brother in Israel. He will not perform the duty of a husband's brother. What is the word for husband, Raya?
It's not in there.
It's not in there? They just added it?
Yeah, it's just brother. They're just using
Oh, it's just brother. Isn't that interesting? Husband is an added word. Wow. Then the elders of the city shall call him and speak to him. But if he stands firm and says, I do not want to take her.
Oh, then, brother-in-law, Yabam.
Yabam, brother-in-law. Brother-in-law. All right, well, that would be a husband. I mean, yeah, that's a husband, but we're not talking about husbands. We're talking about a man's woman. This is his brother's woman. Then his brother's woman shall come in the presence of the elders, remove his sandal from his foot, spit in his face, and answer and say, so shall it be done to the man who will not build up his brother's house. This is what we're talking about. I think it's so interesting that years, hundreds of years, several hundred years, couple hundred years at least, more than probably 250 years before Torah is given to us on Mount Sinai, Jacob knew it. Judah knew it. The sons knew it. Isn't that interesting? But look what Onan does. It says, but Onan knew that the heir would not be his. And it came to pass when he went, what is the word there? Not went. When he came, there it is right there. Went, came, I guess went's probably all right. To his brother's woman, he emitted on the ground. Second man that's emitting on the ground. Lest he should give an heir to his brother. Why wouldn't he want to give an heir to his brother? Can you think of a reason? Could it be that the secondborn's going to get the firstborn's double portion? If there is no firstborn. But if there is a firstborn, the son, then the son is going to get the double portion. And he's going to get a single portion. That's what it looks like to me. So what happened? He emitted on the ground, lest he should give an heir to his brother. And the thing which he did displeased Jehovah. Therefore he killed him also. Jeez. We're going through the family pretty fast, aren't we? Do you think Judah's starting to get concerned? I think I would be getting concerned. But is it because of Tamar? A woman of worth? A woman of the son of Shem? No. No, it's not about them. It's about these wicked sons who came from a woman of Canaan. Then Judah said to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, remain a widow in your father's house till my son Shelah is grown. Remain a widow in your father's house. He's sending her back to the father's house. What was his name? Elam. Go back home, dear. When my son's old enough, I'll give you to him. Tamar's a woman of worth. She's going to do what her master says. And what does it say? And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house. Now, in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, here they're still calling her the daughter of Shua, not Aliat. Judah's wife, Judah's woman, died. And Judah was comforted and went up. Went up. What is the word for went up there? Let's just take a quick peek. Is it descended? Allah. No, it's ascending. He's ascending. He's ascending. Maybe it was, the town was higher up. In the mountains, I mean. Someplace where they had to go up. Could be. Went up. Now, in the process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's woman, died, and Judah was comforted and went up to his sheep shearers at Timnah, he and his friend Hira, the Adulamites. This says it is his sheep shearers. Let's watch for that in Yasher and see if these are his sheep or is he, what's going on here? He and his friend Hira, the Adulamites. Adullam was a city in Canaan. So this man, Hira, is also a Canaanite. And it was told Tamar, saying, look, your father-in-law is going to Timnah to shear his sheep. Look what she does. So she took off her widow's garments, covered herself with a veil, and wrapped herself and sat in an open place, which is on the way to Timnah. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given to him as a woman. She's, in a sense, how should I say it? Purgatory. She's waiting to be given. She can't be really taken by another man. She's waiting to be given to this next son. He's grown now, but Judah's failed to give her to him. She's owed what? She's owed the seed of Judah. Tried to get it through tried to get it through Onan, supposed to get it through Shelah. But she hasn't. Looks like she's going to take matters into her own hand. She was not given to him for a woman. When Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot. Woman's face covered, acting like a harlot, dressing like a harlot, must be a harlot. Isn't it interesting that Judah is willing to take a harlot? Surprises me. Thought she was a harlot because she covered her face. How did Tamar know that Judah would even be interested in a harlot? Did Judah do this often? These are questions we have to ask ourselves, isn't it? She heard he was going to Timnah. Hey, I'll dress as a harlot. Not something would come to my mind, that's for sure. Then he turned to her by the way and said, please let me come in to you. For he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. So he said, what will you give me that you may come in to me? Is it okay as long as the woman is not his daughter-in-law? He can go to a harlot if he wants, but not his daughter-in-law? No, that doesn't any make sense, does it? What will you give me that you may come into me? And he said, I will send a young goat from the flock. So she said, will you give me a pledge till you send it? What am I going to use for collateral? Then he said, what pledge shall I give you? So she said, your signet and cord and your staff that is in your hand. Then he gave them to her, and he went to her, and she conceived by them. Signet is the signet ring. Something that is going to be his signature when you put it into the wax. It's going to be your seal. It's your signature, your signet. A bracelet. This is interesting. It says twine, bound, bracelet, lace. It's singular. They say bracelets, as I recall. Oh, no, it says cord in this one. In some things it says bracelets. And staff. His walking staff. These are all very distinct things that belong to a man. Be like me giving my wallet, I suppose, and a ring if I wore a ring. By the way, Raya has a ring. It's the sign that she's my woman. I don't. I'm the master. But if I had a ring, this would be comparable to taking that ring. If I had a staff and used a staff, that would be something that you could give. But it's very distinctive of a man in particular, isn't it? Well, that's going to work into our story very significantly. Here's good, as far as Judah's concerned, he's thinking, well, this woman really wants to make sure she gets her goat. Well, so what happens? So she arose and went away and laid aside her veil and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent a young goat by the hand of his friend, the Adullamite, Hira, probably, to receive his pledge from the woman's hand. He's got nothing to hide from Hira. Is that his name, Hira? Hira, yes. So he arose, I read that, and Judah sent the young goat by the hand of his friend, the Adullamite, to receive his pledge from the woman's hand. But he did not find her. Now this is not Judah. This is the man whom he sent, probably Hira. Then he asked the men of the place, saying, where is the harlot who was openly on the roadside? And they said, there is no harlot in this place. There's no harlot here. So he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. Also the men of the place said, there was no harlot in this place. That's got to get Judah wondering, doesn't it? He's out of his signet ring, his bracelet, or whatever that is, and his staff. Then Judah said, let her take them for herself, lest we be shamed. For I sent this young goat, and you have not found her. And it came to pass, about 3 months after, that Judah was told, saying, Tamar, your daughter-in-law, has played the harlot. Tamar, your daughter-in-law. He sent her back to her father. But they're calling her his daughter-in-law. Furthermore, she is with child by harlotry. So Judah said, bring her out and let her be burned. Wow! What's going on here? Let me just show you a couple things in Torah. Here it says, Leviticus 21:9. The daughter of any priest. Now this is a priest. Okay, this is Leviticus 21 talking about the priests. If a daughter of any priest, the daughter of any priest, if she profanes, kalal, defiles, wounds, plays the harlot, she profanes her father, she shall be burned by fire. That is the daughter of a priest who plays the harlot. Well, Judah's not a priest. Look what it says here. But if the thing is true, this is talking about a man who takes a woman. The evidence of her virginity was not on the bed. There was no blood on the bed from breaking her hymen. It says if this thing is true, and the evidence of her virginity are not found for the young woman, then they shall bring the young woman to the door of her father's house. And the men of the city shall stone her to death with stones. Why? Because she has done a disgraceful thing in Israel, to play the harlot in her father's house. So you shall put away the evil from among you. Her father's house. We have the world being trained to play the harlot in your father's house. There's hardly a woman these days who hasn't played the harlot in their father's house. Even the Family Channel's promoting it. Far more than when I was a boy. You rarely heard about a woman who was doing that sort of thing. Here's something that I was wondering. I said, would she be considered betrothed to Sheila? I wonder. She's waiting for Sheila to come of age, but he hasn't given her Sheila. It's in whose power? It's in Judah's power, isn't it, to give her his son? But if she is betrothed to Sheila, what does that say about Judah, who took a betrothed woman? Oh, bad idea, isn't it? Now the sin is on him and her because she didn't cry out. Remember what it says about a woman who's taken by another man? I guess I don't have it on here. I thought I did save that. Let's continue. We're going to go to bring her out to be burned. 25. When she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law. Look at this. When she was brought out, she sent to her father-in-law. Is he not there? Brought out. How is she brought out? Brought out of Shem's house. Brought out of Elam's house. Brought out. What is brought out? But she's sending. It says she sent to her father-in-law. Sent to her father-in-law. Sent a message to her father-in-law. Sent the belongings of this man who impregnated to her father-in-law. By the man to whom these belong, I am with child. And she said, please determine whose these are, the signet and cord and staff. Well, of course, Judah recognizes it right away, doesn't he? How could she get it unless she were the woman? And now he realizes that he was supposed to be the one who was to give Sheila to her, and he failed. It says, so Judah acknowledged them and said, she has been more righteous than I. Righteous. I wonder if they have. No, I didn't look at the word for that. Probably is righteous. Because I did not give her to Sheila, my son. And he never knew her again. So it sounds like he never came back into Tamar again. Makes me think about Torah, a man taking the wife of his son. And that's one of the things that you don't do in Torah, isn't it? Now it came to pass at the time of giving birth that, behold, twins were in her womb. And so it was when she was giving birth that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took a scarlet thread and bound it to his hand, saying, this one came out first. Then it happened, as he drew back his hand, that his brother came out unexpectedly. And she said, how did you break through? This breach be upon you. Therefore they called his name Perez. Perez is in the line of David. So Terah is mentioned in Torah because she's a woman who's going to give birth to a significant man. In this case, Perez. Therefore his name is called Perez. Afterward his brother came out, who had the scarlet thread on his hand, and his name was Zerah. Now, we finished this chapter, but why is this chapter even here? I don't get it. I don't get it. We're going to talk about, like I said, after this next chapter, we're going to go, well, here, the next chapter is this. We're going to go back to talking about Joseph again in Potiphar's house. Oh, it's really fun to see this. We can maybe shoot through this and get started on Yasher. Wait till you see what Potiphar's woman was like. Oh my goodness. Now Joseph had been taken down to Egypt. What does it say? And Joseph descended to Egypt. And Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. No, Joseph had not been bought or sold to Potiphar by the Ishmaelites. Remember what we saw? He was sold to Potiphar by the Midianites. Here it is. Joseph was sold to Potiphar by the Midianites, not the Ishmaelites or the Midianites. Yasher makes this very clear. Now the Midianites, this word usually gets mistranslated as Midianites. It's very subtle between Midian and Midian. Very subtle. Now the Midianites had sold him in Egypt to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh and captain of the guard. Yeah, they don't acknowledge the Midianites because they can't figure out where the Midianites came from, I think. They're still got it with the Ishmaelites. But now how can you have the Ishmaelites bring them down and then we're going back to the Midianites? Oh, it's so confusing. Verse 2. It says, and Jehovah was with Joseph, and he was a successful man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian, his master. There it is, Adon, his Adon. This says his Adon. And his master saw that Jehovah was with him. Look at what it says, though. He was a successful man. You know what? We're going to see in Yasher that it looks to me like Joseph is accumulating, shall I say, wealth for himself as a servant of this man. That's what it looks like. Let's take a look at that. Remember to look for that. It says successful. And his master saw that Jehovah was with him, and that Jehovah made all he did prosper in his hands. So Joseph found favor in his sight and served him. Then he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put under his authority. Hear that? Joseph is number 2 in the house of Potiphar. Joseph rules even over his woman. Remember, his woman is his possession. Oh, I know it doesn't seem right, does it, in today's time? Because we make women men. Co-equals. But is that what's going on in Torah? Wow, we've got a lot to learn. So it was from that time that he made him overseer of his house and all that he had, that Jehovah blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Jehovah was on all that he had in the house and in the field. Then he left all that he had in Joseph's hand, and he did not know what he had except for the bread which he ate. Now Joseph was handsome in form and appearance. Hear that? Heard that once before? Form and appearance. What are we talking about? We're talking about a good-looking body and a handsome face. That's what Rachel had. Remember? Leah's eyes were delicate, but Rachel was beautiful of form and appearance. Leah had the inward beauty. Rachel had the outward beauty. It appears to me that Joseph has both. Inward and outward beauty. He is blessed of Jehovah for how he lives his life. And it came to pass after these things that his master's woman cast longing eyes on Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me." But he refused and said to his master's woman, "It's not his woman. You don't lay with another man's woman. He knows Torah. Look, my master does not know what is with me in his house, and he has committed all that he has to my hand." Oh, I like Joseph so much. I like a man who will do his best under any circumstance. He says, "There is no one greater in this house than I, nor has he kept back anything from me but you, because you are his woman. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against Elohim?" And his master, for that matter. So it was, as she spoke to Joseph day by day, that he did not heed her, to lie with her or be with her. But it happened at this time when Joseph was in the house to do the work, and none of the men of the house was inside. I want to show you something. They use men in here twice, ish and then nashim. And nobody translates this to get both those words into it. I wanted to see men. It's not about women. There might have been women in the house, but it's not about women. Why does it say men? And then why does it say nashim? Here's what it actually says. Not a man from the house. Not a man from the house's men were there inside. Not a man from the house's men were there inside. Why weren't they there? What's going on? Yasher's going to tell us. That she caught him. You know, we talk about two witnesses. Can a woman be a witness? I got a hunch, and this is speculation, but I see it here, I've seen it other places, that it's not about women witnesses, it's about men witnesses. Raya is nodding her head. Thank you, Raya. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. Seems to be about men witnesses. A woman doesn't testify against a man. Men testify against a man. When he says to his men, the Ezra men, "You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor," he's not talking to the ladies. So here we are. Let me read it again. But it happened about this time when Joseph went into the house to do the work, that not a man from the house's men were there inside. That she caught him by his garment, saying, "Lie with me." But he left his garment in her hand and fled and ran outside. You're going to see in Yasher, he ran so fast that he left a piece of his garment in her hand. And it was when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand and fled outside, that she called the men of the house. So now she's going to call the men of the house and spoke to them, saying, "See, he has brought in to us a Hebrew to mock us." He? Who's he? She's talking about her husband. She's criticizing her husband. Does a woman criticize her husband? That's what it seems like. He brought into us a Hebrew to mock us. And he came to me to lie with me, and I cried out with a loud voice. Did she? No, she's bearing false witness against this man. And it happened when he heard that I lifted my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled and went outside. Well, again, we're talking about a piece of a garment. We're not talking about the whole garment. So she kept his garment until her master came home. Oh no, until his master came home, doesn't it? Well, his master is her master. Then she spoke to him with words like these: the Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came in to me to mock me. You brought to us. Yeah, she's blaming it on herself, but this sounds familiar here. Then she spoke to him with words like these, saying, the Hebrew servant whom you brought to us came to me to mock me. It's kind of like she's putting the blame on him instead of on herself. Sound familiar? This is what happened with the garden. Remember when Eve was deceived by the serpent? And she said this to Yehovah. Then the man said, the woman whom you then the man said, the woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate. And Yehovah Elohim said to the woman, what is this you have done? Then the woman said, the serpent deceived me, and I ate. Everybody's passing blame on the next, aren't they? That's what she's doing right now. So it happened, as I lifted up my voice and cried out, that he left his garment with me and fled outside. So it was when his master heard the words which his woman spoke to him, saying, your servant did to me after this manner, that his anger was aroused. And Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, a place where the king's prisoners were confined. And he was there in the prison. But Yehovah was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keepers of the prison. We're almost done with this chapter. And the keepers of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners who were in the prison. He's like the warden, or serving as a warden. Whatever they did there, it was his doing. And the keepers of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority, because Yehovah was with him, and whatever he did, Yehovah made it prosper. What responsibility this man had in the prison. They didn't even, look what it says. And the keepers of the prison did not look into anything that was under Joseph's authority. They didn't even double check him. They trusted him completely. Amazing. Well, this is the very, very brief overview in Torah of what we're going to see some significant things about in Yasher. Let's go to Yasher. And Potiphar heard the words of the Ishmaelites in giving the silver unto the Madanim. And the Madanim, Medanim, took the silver and went on their journey, and the Ishmaelites also returned home. Remember, there was be sure that this man was not stolen. And so when the Midianites came to him, he said, where did you get him? And he made Midianites bring the Ishmaelites before Potiphar, before he would give them the silver. So here's where we're picking up in verse 11. And Potiphar took Joseph and brought him to his house, that he might serve him. And Joseph found favor in the sight of Potiphar, and he placed confidence in him, and made him overseer over his house. And all that belonged to him he delivered over to his hand. And Yehovah was with Joseph, and he became a prosperous man. Did you hear that? Joseph became a prosperous man. And Yehovah blessed the house of Potiphar for the sake of Joseph. And Yehovah was with Joseph, and he was a successful man. He became a prosperous man. Yeah, I think that's what we're talking about. And Potiphar left all that he had in the hands of Joseph. And Joseph was one that caused things to come in and go out. He was the mover and the shaker. And everything was regulated by his wish in the house of Potiphar. And Joseph was 18 years old, a youth with beautiful eyes and a comely appearance. This is what we were just talking about. Good body, beautiful, a handsome face. And like unto him was not in the whole land of Egypt. Now, in Torah, this is how they introduce the woman. They never give her a name. Yasher's going to give her a name. Here's her name. And it was at that time, whilst he was in his master's house, going in and out of the house and attending to his master, Zelicah, his master's woman, lifted up her eyes toward Joseph. And she looked at him, and behold, he was a youth, comely and well favored. And she coveted his beauty in her heart, and her soul was fixed on Joseph. And she enticed him day after day. And Zelicah persuaded Joseph daily. But Joseph did not lift up his eyes to behold his master's woman. He wouldn't even look at her. Kept his eyes down. And Zelicah said unto him, how goodly are thy appearance and form. Truly I have looked at all the slaves, and have not seen so beautiful a slave as thou art. And Joseph said unto her, surely he who created me in my mother's womb created all mankind. Seems to be taking her back to spiritual ideas from the flesh ideas. And she said unto him, how beautiful are thine eyes, with which thou hast dazzled all the inhabitants of Egypt, men and women. And he said unto her, how beautiful they are whilst they are alive. But shouldst thou behold them in the grave, surely thou wouldst move away from them. Helping her to understand these are just temporal things. And she said unto him, how beautiful and pleasing are all thy words. Take now, I pray thee, the harp which is in the house, and play with thy hands, and let us hear thy words. And he said unto her, how beautiful and pleasing are my words when I speak the praise of my Elohim and his glory. And she said unto him, how very beautiful is the hair of thy head. Behold the golden comb which is in the house. Take it, I pray thee, and curl the hair of thy head. And he said unto her, how long wilt thou speak these words? Cease to utter these words to me, and rise and attend to thy domestic affairs. Go back to your duties, woman. And she said unto him, there is no one in the house, and there is nothing to attend to but to thy words and to thy wish. Yet, notwithstanding all this, she could not bring Joseph unto her, neither did he place his eye upon her, but directed his eyes below to the ground. And Zelicah desired Joseph in her heart, that he should lie with her. And at that time, Joseph was sitting in the house doing his work. Zelicah came and sat before him, and she enticed him daily with her discourse to lie with her, or ever to look at her. But Joseph would not hearken to her. Do you understand what we're seeing here versus Torah? There's just so much more to this woman than we ever imagined, and you haven't seen a half of it yet. And she said to him, if thou wilt not do according to my words, I will chastise thee with the punishment of death, and put an iron yoke upon thee. And Joseph said unto her, surely Elohim, who created man, loosest the fetters of prisoners. And it is he who will deliver me from thy prison and from thy judgment. Ooh, isn't that just a foreshadowing of things to come? And when she could not prevail over him, to persuade him, and her soul being still fixed upon him, her desire threw herself into grievous sickness. She's now getting sick, physically sick, because she can't have Joseph. And all the women of Egypt came to visit her, and they said unto her, Why art thou in this declining state? Thou that lacketh nothing! Surely thy husband, thy Baal, is a great and esteemed prince in the sight of the king. Shouldst thou lack anything of what thy heart desireth? And Zelicah answered them, saying, This day it shall be known to you whence this discourse springs in which you see me. And she commanded her maidservants to prepare food for all the women. And she made a banquet for them, and all the women ate in the house of Zelicah. And she gave them knives to peel the citrons to eat them. And she commanded that they should dress Joseph in costly garments, and that he should appear before them. And Joseph came before their eyes, and all the women looked at Joseph and could not take their eyes from off him. And they all cut their hands with the knives that they had in their hands, and all the citrons that were in their hands were filled with blood, covered with blood. And they knew not what they had done, but they continued to look at the beauty of Joseph, and did not turn their eyelids from him. And Zelicah saw what they had done, and she said unto them, What is this work that you have done? Behold, I gave you citrons to eat, and you have all cut your hands. And the women saw their hands, and behold, they were full of blood. And their blood flowed down upon their garments, and they said unto her, This slave in your house has overcome us, and we could not turn our eyelids from him on account of his beauty. And she said unto them, Surely this is happening to you in the moment that you looked at him, and you could not contain yourselves from him. How then can I restrain when he is constantly in my house, and I see him day after day going in and out of my house? How then can I keep from declining, or even from perishing on account of this? These women and this woman are completely smitten by Joseph. And they said unto her, The words are true, for who can see this beautiful form in the house and refrain from him? And is he not thy slave, and attend to thy house? And why dost thou not tell him that which is in thy heart, and suffereth thy soul to perish through this matter? Suffereth thy soul to perish through this matter? Because of adultery? Maybe it's saying, then suffereth thy soul to perish in this manner. I think that's really what it's probably saying. Instead of and, it probably should say, then suffer thy soul to perish in this manner. It would make more sense to me. And she said unto them, I am daily endeavoring to persuade him, and he will not consent to my wishes. And I promised him everything that is good, and yet I could not meet with no return from him. I am therefore in a declining state, as you see. And Zelicah became ill on account of her desire toward Joseph, and she was desperately lovesick on account of him. And all the people of the house of Zelicah and her Baal knew nothing of this matter, that Zelicah was ill on account of her love for Joseph. And all the people of the house asked her, saying, Why art thou ill? and declining and lacketh nothing. So here's the ladies asking the same question. Now here's even the people of the house asking the same question. And she said unto them, I know not this thing which is daily increasing upon me. Well, she does know. And all the women and her friends came daily to see her. Yeah, came daily to see her, maybe to see Joseph. And they spoke to her, and she said unto them, this can only be through the love of Joseph. And they said unto her, entice him and seize him secretly, perhaps he may hearken to thee, and put off this death from thee. And Zelicah became worse from her love to Joseph, for Joseph. And she continued to decline till she had scarce strength to stand. And on a certain day, Joseph was doing his master's work in the house. And Zelicah came secretly and fell suddenly upon him. And Joseph rose up against her, and he was more powerful than she, and he brought her down to the ground. And Zelicah wept on account of her desire toward him. And she supplicated him with weeping, and her tears flowed down her cheeks. And she spoke unto him in a voice of supplication and bitterness of soul, saying, hast thou ever heard, seen, or known so beautiful a woman as I am? Or better than myself, who speaks daily unto thee? Fall into a decline through love for thee, confer all this honor upon thee, and still thou wilt not hearken to my voice? Here's a woman that's frustrated. And if thou fear thy master, lest he punish thee, as the king liveth, no harm shall come to thee from thy master through this thing. Now therefore pray, listen to me, and consent for the sake of the honor which I have conferred upon thee, and put off this death from me. And why should I die for thy sake? And she ceased to speak. You know, most men would finally succumb, wouldn't they? But Joseph is a man of God. He's a man of Elohim who cares about keeping Yehovah's righteousness. And Joseph answered her, saying, refrain from me. Leave this matter to my master. Behold, my master knoweth not what there is with me in the house. For all that belongeth to me he has delivered into my hand. And how shall I do these things in my master's house? For he hath also greatly honored me in his house. And he also has made me overseer of his house. And he has exalted me. And there is no one greater in this house than I am. Hear that? He's saying that to the woman, isn't he? And my master has refrained nothing from me, excepting thee who art his woman. How then canst thou speak these words unto me? How can I do this great evil, to sin to Elohim and to thy Baal? Now therefore refrain from me and speak no harm. Now therefore refrain from me and speak no more such words as these, for I will not hearken to thy words. But Zelicah would not hearken to Joseph when he spoke these words unto her, but she daily enticed him to listen to her. How long was Joseph in the house of Pharaoh? You know, I want to say 3 years. He was 18 when he came there. Remember, we just read that. Let's watch for that. And it was after this that the brook of Egypt was filled above all its sides. And all the inhabitants of Egypt went forth. And also the king and the princes went forth with timbrels and dance. We got water! We needed water! For it was a great rejoicing in Egypt, And the holiday at that time of the inundation of the sea, Sihar. Inundation, here's what inundation means. Talking about rising of a body of water. It's overflowing onto normally dry lands. Plains fertilized. This is probably what's going on in the land of Goshen right now. The whole land is just flooded. Sihar literally means dark colored, applied to the Nile. So when we talk about Sihar, it appears we're talking about the Nile. This is Jeremiah. As the Egyptian Gior and the Greek Melas, how is this? This is not Jeremiah 28. I'm not sure what's going on here. And the Greek, here, let me move this over for you. Oh, you can see it. Should be able to see it. There it is. Greek melas, to express the dark, turbid colors given to its waters by the fertilizing soil which is deposited at its yearly overflow. Be still, you inhabitants of the coastland, you merchants of Sidon. Remember, Sidon is way up north, whom those who cross the sea have filled, and on great waters of the grain. Oh, shoot, I gotta open this up. Let's try it now. And on the great waters, the grain of Sihor, the harvest of the river is her revenue, and she is a marketplace for the nations. I put, is this the spring equinox celebration, sun god worship, or river worship, perhaps? I got a hunch it may be related to the equinox. It's spring. When do we get the floods? Usually is in the spring, isn't it? Spring rains. The snow melt. And the Egyptians went out to the river to rejoice. So Sihar, it's a river. It's not a sea. They call it a sea. Well, it's probably waters. Probably they just translated it as sea, which is a bit confusing to us. And when the Egyptians went out to the river to rejoice, as was their custom, all the people of the house of Potiphar went with them. But Zelicah would not go with them, for she said, I am indisposed. And she remained alone in the house, and no other person was with her in the house. This is what we're talking about. And there was no man in the house, for all the house's men were gone, said in Torah. And she rose up and ascended to her temple in the house, dressed herself in princely garments, and she placed upon her head precious stones of onyx stones, inlaid with silver and gold. And she beautified her face and skin with all sorts of women's purifying liquids. And she perfumed the temple and the house with cassia and frankincense. And she spread myrrh and aloes. And she afterwards sat at the entrance of the temple in the passage of the house through which Joseph passed to do his work. And behold, Joseph came from the field and entered the house to do his master's work. Ambush! And he came to the place through which he had to pass. And he saw all the work of Zelicah, and he turned back. Never mind, I've got something else I've got to do. And Zelicah saw Joseph turning back from her, and she called out to him, saying, What aileth thee, Joseph? Come to thy work, and behold, I will make room for thee until thou shalt have passed to thy seat. I'll let you by. And Joseph returned and came to the house and passed from thence to the place of his seat. And he sat down in his master's work, as usual. Must mean like a desk or something. And behold, Zelicah came to him and stood before him in princely garments, and the scent from her clothes was spread to a distance. And she hastened and caught hold of Joseph and his garments. And she said unto him, As the king liveth, if thou wilt not perform my request, thou shalt die this day. And she hearkened and stretched forth her other hand and drew a sword from beneath her garments. And she placed it upon Joseph's neck. And she said, Rise and perform my request. And if not, thou diest this day. And Joseph was afraid of her at her doing this thing. And he rose up to flee from her. And she seized the front of his garments in the terror of his flight. And the garment which Zelicah seized was torn. So that wasn't a whole garment, it was just a piece of the garment. And Joseph left the garment in the hand of Zelicah, and he fled and got out, for he was in fear. And when Zelicah saw that Joseph's garment was torn, and that he had left it in her hand, and had fled, she was afraid for her life. Hear that? This is an adulterous woman. She's afraid for her life, and rightfully so, lest a report should spread concerning her. And she rose up and acted with cunning, and put off the garments of which she was dressed, and she put on other garments. And she took Joseph's garment, and she laid it beside her. And she went and seated herself in the place where she had sat in her illness, before the people of the house had gone out to the river. And she called a young lad who was in the house, and she ordered him to call the people of the house, the men of the house, to her. And when she saw them, she said unto them with a loud voice in lamentation, See what a Hebrew your master has brought to me. Oh, I just think she's talking bad about her master there. In the house, has brought to me in the house, for he came this day to lie with me. For when you had gone out, he came to the house, and seeing that there was no person in the house, no man in the house, he came unto me and caught hold of me with intent to lie with me. And I seized his garment and tore them and called out against him with a loud voice. And when I had lifted up my voice, he was afraid of his life and left his garment before me and fled. And the people of her house spoke nothing, but their wrath was very much kindled against Joseph. And they went to his master and told him the words of his wile, that wily Joseph. Wile, deceive, beguile, like the wily coyote. And Potiphar came home enraged, and his woman cried out to him, saying, What is this thing thou hast done unto me in bringing a Hebrew servant into my house? For he came unto me this day to sport with me. Sport with me, there it is, sport with me. Thus did he do unto me this day. And Potiphar heard the words of his woman, and he ordered Joseph to be punished with severe stripes. And they did so to him. In Torah, it doesn't talk about the punishment that Joseph receives from Potiphar. He just puts him in prison. But there's more to the story. And whilst they were smiting him, Joseph called out with a loud voice. And he lifted up his eyes to heaven, and he said, O Yahovah Elohim, thou knowest that I am innocent of all these things. And why shall I die this day through the falsehood by the hand of these uncircumcised men, whom thou knowest? It's the men who are chastising him, not the women. And whilst Potiphar's men were beating Joseph, he continued to cry out and weep. And there was a child there, 11 months old. And Jehovah opened the mouth of the child, and he spake these words before Potiphar's men who were smiting Joseph, saying, "Here is Potiphar's own son, 11 months old, speaking words." Listen to what he says. "What do you want of this man? And why do you do this evil unto him? My mother speaketh falsely and uttereth lies." Thus was the transaction. He's going to tell you what happened. And the child told them accurately all that happened. This is an 11-month-old son. What all that had happened and all the words of Zelicah to Joseph. Day after day she declared unto them. And all the men heard the words of the child, the Yelad, and they wondered greatly at the child's words. And the child ceased to speak and became still. And Potiphar was very much ashamed at the words of his son. And he commanded his men not to beat Joseph any more. And the men ceased beating Joseph. And Potiphar took Joseph and ordered him to be brought to justice before the priests, who were judges belonging to the king, in order to judge him concerning this affair. The king appointed the judges. And Potiphar and Joseph came before the priests, who were the king's judges. And he said to them, "Decide, I pray you, what judgment is due to a servant, for thus has he done." And the priest said to Joseph, "Why dost thou do this thing to thy master?" And Joseph answered them, saying, "Not so, my lords, Adonim, not so. Thus was the matter." And Potiphar said to Joseph, "Surely I trusted in thy hand all that belonged to me, and I withheld nothing from thee but my woman. And how couldst thou do this evil?" And Joseph answered, saying, "Not so, Adonai. As Jehovah liveth, and as thy soul liveth, Adonai, the word which thou didst hear from thy woman is untrue. She's a liar! For thus was the affair this day. A year has elapsed to me since I have been in thy house." So maybe he was only in there for a year. "Hast thou seen any iniquity in me, or anything which might cause thee to demand my life?" Of course, he started in the field and then moved to the house, didn't he? And the priests said unto Potiphar, "Send, we pray thee, and let them bring before us Joseph's torn garments, and let us see the tear in it. If it shall be that the tear is in the front of the garment, then his face must have been opposite to her, and she must have caught hold of him to come to her. And with deceit did thy wife do all that she has spoken." They've got some doubts, don't they? And they brought Joseph's garment before the priests, who were judges. And they saw, and behold, the tear was in the front of Joseph. And all the judging priests knew that she had pressed him. And they said, the judgment of death is not due this slave, for he has done nothing. Hear that? He's done nothing. But here we have a woman saying he's done something. So because now of this woman, look what happens. To this slave, for he has done nothing. But his judgment is this, or his judgment is that he be placed in prison house on account of the report which through him has gone forth against thy woman. And Potiphar heard their words, and he placed him in the prison house, at the place where the king's prisoners are confined. And Joseph was in the house of confinement for 12 years. Okay, 12 years. So 12 years plus the year in Pharaoh's house is 13 years. He came in when he was 17, and that would make him 30 when he's getting out of prison, which I believe is the time that, or is the age when he came out. So I guess he was in Pharaoh's house for just a year. Notwithstanding this, his master's women did not turn from him, and she did not cease from speaking to him day after day to hearken to her. And at the end of 3 months, Zelicah continued going to Joseph to the house of confinement day by day. And she enticed him to hearken to her. And Zelicah said to Joseph, how long wilt thou remain in this house? But hearken now to my voice, and I will bring thee out of this house. And Joseph answered her, saying, it is better for me to remain in this house than to hearken to thy words, to sin against Elohim. And she said unto him, if thou wilt not perform my wish. Look at, here he's in prison. She's still trying to take him. If thou wilt not perform my wish, I will pluck out thine eyes, add fetters to thy feet, and I will deliver thee into the hands of them whom thou didst not know before. And Joseph answered, behold, Elohim, the Elohim of the whole earth, is able to deliver me from all that thou canst do unto me. For he openeth the eyes of the blind, and loosest those that are bound, and preserved all strangers who are unacquainted with the land. Isn't that an interesting thing to say? Listen to this again. Behold, the Elohim of the whole earth is able to deliver me from all that thou canst do unto me. For he openeth the eyes of the blind, and loosest those that are bound, and preservest all strangers, all Zor, all Garim, Zorim, which is it? Who are unacquainted with the land. These are men unacquainted with the land. Is he saying that he is going to preserve men who are unacquainted? Is unacquainted equivalent to having those covenants with the land? I think it might be. Strangers, ger, who are unacquainted with the land. That's who Yahovah is going to preserve, men who are going to follow him. I think that's what Joseph's saying. And when Zelicah was unable to persuade Joseph to hearken to her, she left off going to entice him. And Joseph was still confined in the house of confinement. And Jacob, the father of Joseph, now we're doing a transitional paragraph here, and Jacob, the father of Joseph, and all his brethren who were in the land of Canaan still mourned and wept in those days on account of Joseph. For Jacob refused to be comforted for his son Joseph. And Jacob cried aloud and wept and mourned all those days. It's 1:50. I think I'm going to stop here, you guys. We're going to talk next time about the wives. Look how it starts. And it was at that time, in that year, which is the year of Joseph's going down to Egypt. Hear that? What's going on right now while he's in Potiphar's house? All his brothers are being married, having sons. This is all the time that he's in the house and when he's in prison. And they're going to tell us who the sons are. Oh, this is all very, very interesting. And it makes you realize that when the brothers went down to Egypt to look for Joseph, they all had families. They had multiple sons. There was a lot going on here. Well, we'll see it all next week. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so glad to see how many of you made it. It's so hard. You know, we've been gone for 2 weeks. I thought, oh, I hope they don't get out of the routine. Please let them come back. Please let them keep listening. And you did. Thank you. I had even more today than we've had for many days. Hey, I love you guys so much. Thank you for joining me. We'll see you again next week, okay? Love you tons. Bye now.